Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm DJ Ross, and boy are my arms tired.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, we're playing Little Witch in the Woods and Citizen Sleeper.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's all I got. That's just my standard, ooh, video games, ooh.
That is the proper level of excitement for video games. Yeah.
Just always so excited.
Yeah. If not, why would we subject ourselves to this every week?
True.
Yeah. Could just play Sims 4 for the rest of my life.
We need to do something to just drag you away from that every once in a while. It's not healthy, the amount of that game that you play. What I'm
sort of subtly referencing here is a little conversation that we had on our Discord just today, the day that we're recording this on Tuesday, about kind of the most played games thus far in 2022. And it's not games that you would think. And it's, in fact, not games in 2022.
Wasn't? You didn't predict all of those?
I suspect, but I don't have a sense of how big of a phenomena like Minecraft is 13 years after launch. To see that was definitely, I don't know if disappointing is the right word, or certainly eye-opening. Eye-opening is the right word.
I'm looking at those lists now, and I wonder, okay, so this is from NPD?
Correct, yeah.
So, I think that a lot of this is kind of expected. Like Minecraft, sure. Grand Theft Auto 5, of course. Several flavors of Call of Duty. It wouldn't be a top 10 if Call of Duty wasn't on there at least twice.
Sure.
But
and it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Madden, again, is one of those things or NBA 2K22. I don't have any way of sort of gauging the success of those things. It's not part of my social circle. It's certainly not something that I monitor and have, a level of enthusiasm for. So, the fact that it is one of the most played games of the year, I guess, is a little surprising to me.
I want to know if Roblox should be on here, because I feel like that's one of those games that is just phenomenally popular, and yet nobody talks about it.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, the most shocking thing on here to me is Among Us is still here.
Still a phenomena. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually really impressive. I know it's hugely popular, but to still be in the top 10 after several years after it kind of had its blow up. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. That's one of the games on the list I've actually played.
Yeah. Besides The Sims 4.
Sure. Never played a Sims. No, that's not true. I played Sims when it came on the original Xbox 100 years ago, and I did not see the appeal.
Oh, I've also never played The Sims, which I think is weird because I think I would maybe enjoy it.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things anybody finds out I like Animal Crossing, there's, a certain subset of games that they sort of cycle through that you must like, or have you ever tried? And The Sims inevitably comes up.
Sure.
Yeah. Or any number of farming simulators or Harvest Moon games come up, and I've tried and have bounced off all of those. And nothing quite hits like Animal Crossing does. But
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It does look like a lot of other games.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was, I was a little surprised. They made a point of saying that Elden Ring, which is kind of a game that, came out this year and got a ton of press, and it seemed like everybody everywhere on the internet was super excited about and then playing Elden Ring. On this list of most played games so far this year, Elden Ring was number 20.
It's just not as many people into it as are into Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah. A game from 2013.
Right. Ooh, man, we missed the 10th anniversary. What were we doing? We should have celebrated.
No, coming up. It's coming up next year.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I don't know how
we're early.
Work.
Yeah, we're
okay,
early.
Good. Still time to plan.
Still time to plan our Grand Theft Auto 5 birthday party.
Oh, be still my heart.
Yeah, somebody on Twitter was like, how come there's not a Grand Theft Auto 6? And I'm like, well, here's your answer. Because they don't have to. They could just make Grand Theft Auto 5 things for the rest of their life.
Yeah. It's kind of mind-blowing, actually, because it's been 2 console generations since the original release at this point.
This is true.
3, I don't know how you count them. On some level, though, like, do they need to make a Grand Theft Auto 6? They've got the whole online thing. I think they should just do a full sort of refresh of that, and then people can just play that for another 10 years.
Yeah. It's probably kind of what's happening, right?
I think, yeah, more or less.
Yeah. It's like the human body.
Yeah,
You shed all of
that.
your skin cells once every 28 days. It's Grand Theft Auto 5, basically, just does the same thing. It's a new game once a month.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Do they have realistic skin shedding in that game yet?
I would hope so.
They probably do. It's just, in typical Rockstar fashion, it's extremely convoluted, so you have to know the right button and analog stick
Correct.
combination to access it.
There was, on a quasi-related note, there was also a tweet this week about Norman Reedus talking about the possibility of Death Stranding 2.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, if there's any game that's going to have realistic skin shedding, it's going to be Death Stranding 2.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, like, the possibility of it, which it sounds like he is actively working on. So either it exists or he's just, I don't know what he's doing. It's like, well, I just spent the weekend making Death Stranding 2 in my garage. Like, what are you talking about, Norman?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to see this list of the most played games thus far this year, it's located on the Twitter machine. We'll include a link in our show notes if you want to, absorb the whole thing.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, there's that.
So how about those Sims?
Yeah, I don't know. As I was looking through the list, that was probably the one that I was sort of like, The Sims. But again, similar to Minecraft and Fortnite and things like that, it just doesn't come up on my radar, really.
Yeah. I was surprised that, like, why isn't it The Sims 5 or 6? But I imagine it's just, like, for the same reasons that it's still Grand Theft Auto 5. They've just been releasing new content packs for that for 8 years, it looked like. 2014.
Checks notes, 8 years. Yeah. So that was exactly, in Discord I said, The Sims, really? And the response from somebody in the community who knows a little bit more than I do was, yeah, they're still making new content for it. So it continues to get refreshed periodically.
Yeah.
And people keep coming back. Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Look, if they continue to make new stuff for Animal Crossing New Horizons, I would still do it. Yeah, I would still play it. So
yeah,
the fact that
they feel like that's what they should have done.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we're all a little probably surprised that they don't. But again, it still pops up on the list of the most played games of 2022. That's what year it is.
Right.
Without all of that extra content. So maybe it's not necessary.
Yeah. It's too bad because I feel like, I don't know if this was exactly the right moment, but so many games are just releasing the edition that turns into the forever version of that game. I feel like they potentially could have done it with this one, although now that I think about it, I was like, I don't know if I want to spend 10 more years with that crafting system. Maybe they can do this with the next one. But it's like, it's on the cusp of it being the forever Animal Crossing.
Yeah. It would need some pretty serious quality of life improvements.
Yes. Yeah, that is an understatement.
So this sort of dovetails nicely to a related topic that I kind of wanted to throw out this week that also popped up on our Discord. We're just going to mine our Discord this week for content. Hopefully everybody's okay with that.
We did play games that we will discuss eventually.
We will get to those as well. But our buddy Essien, hashtag friend of the show, asked a fun question on the Discord just recently, and I wanted to kind of share it here. He says, does anyone else miss the feeling of excitement for a new game? I seriously can't think of a game I'm excited for right now. Does anyone have anything on their radar? I miss that feeling that I used to have when I would contemplate taking a day off from work just to play a video game all day. Nothing has piqued my interest quite like that for years now.
How does that guy have time to get excited for new games? He just goes between one enormous, 100-hour game and devours it in a weekend and then moves on to the next one.
Yeah.
At least from what I understand.
a productive and responsible adult with commitments and jobs and, families and things. So
Right. Are we sure he's just one person?
Right.
Like 3 or 4 people.
Eshin clone number 4 is playing. Yeah.
It's actually Wario 64.
So yeah, I thought that was cool. Kind of a cool question. I was trying to sort of remember back to the last game that I was so excited about. I had to use PTO to play it the day it came out. Interestingly enough, that probably would have been Animal Crossing New Horizons if we didn't have a global pandemic, and I had just been furloughed at that point, so didn't have to use any PTO.
Right. Yeah,
I was on permanent PTO at that point. Yeah, as luck would have it. But prior to that, it was Breath of the Wild, the last Zelda.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the last time I remember taking a vacation day to play a video game all day.
I don't think I took time off for Breath of the Wild.
It was also Switch release day, if I remember correctly. So
it was
very excited about sort of stalking the UPS guy that day, making sure that none of my neighbors stole my Switch off my porch.
Was anyone playing anything other than Breath of the Wild on Switch release day, though? I don't even remember what else was out. It was like Snipper Clips or something.
Snipper Clips, yeah, that was the other one that popped into my brain.
Yeah, it's like, oh boy, gotta get home and play some Snipper Clips.
Play Snipper Clips well, I don't know. I was going to say downloading the day one patch for Zelda, but there wasn't one, because Nintendo.
Nothing against Snipper Clips. That's a terrific game. I'm just saying it.
Oh yeah, tons of fun.
Hard to stack up next to Breath of the Wild.
So, well, not necessarily the entire point of Estien's question. Do you have a memory of using a PTO or a vacation day or calling in sick to school and or work to play a video game, DJ?
Oh, sure. I actually never done this until, and you're not going to be surprised at all, until they started releasing expansion packs for Final Fantasy XIV.
I knew you were going to say
that. It's somehow just, I don't know, like it's a big deal, or if a game has to be a pretty big deal for me to justify taking off work, because my mindset is like, I'll just play it when I get home. It's fine.
It'll still be there.
Yeah. Certainly there have been games which I was very excited for. There were a couple instances where maybe I had planned out my work day where I could arrive home earlier than usual.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did that for Metal Gear Solid 4. But no, it wasn't until probably like Heavensward, it was the first expansion pack where I just blocked off a whole day. I was like, no, that's it. Typically what they will do is like they'll have the official release on a Tuesday, like most video games. But they will run a few days of early access for people who pre-order. And those conveniently usually start on a Friday. So it's pretty easy for me to just be like, oh, I'm taking a long weekend this week. So see you guys later.
Nice.
And then I guess it's just been a thing. I did the same thing for Endwalker in December, which, if you remember, it was kind of awkward because it got delayed 2 weeks. So around the entire world, there were a bunch of disoriented Final Fantasy XIV players who had to reschedule the PTO they had scheduled. But I'm very fortunate to have a pretty flexible like work schedule, especially, everybody, or like most people at my job currently work remotely. So, like I said, kind of flexible, not a big deal to reschedule.
Yeah. Well, good, that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have anything on your radar that's sort of coming up that you can foresee doing that again?
No, not really. I mean, again, you're just going to continue rolling your eyes. The things I get really excited for these days are like the big patches that come out every few months. But as far as individual games, it's been a long time since there was one game that came out where I was just like, I don't know, I would consider taking time off for it, or I was even just like anticipating it that much.
Right.
And I don't know why that is. I sort of like ask myself that question sometimes. I'm just like, wow, am I just not excited for video games anymore? It's kind of alarming.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of the natural follow-up question, and maybe the sort of the subtext of Essien's question here is that, are games less interesting, or are the games that are coming out we're just less interested in playing? Is that something we've sort of grown out of, or what?
I think some of it is like games, I feel like in general, are kind of less novel than they used to be. And it's for a couple of reasons. Like, one is that there are just so many. Who can even keep track of which ones are coming out?
Right.
But it's rarer for games these days to really stand out among others. Like, I'll have games that I'm looking forward to marked on my calendar, like I'll have the release dates on there. But probably 90% of them are just very similar to existing games, or they're, in some cases, just sequels and long-running franchises of games that I've already played.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels more like more of this game that I've put into, rather than, back when I was a kid, a new game would come out and just be like, I have no idea what this is going to be like. And it was just a completely different experience.
Sure. Yeah, same. I think the stuff that I am looking forward to this year are kind of comfortable blankets in a lot of ways of video games. I am cautiously excited about the new Saints Row game. I've enjoyed those in the past. I like Volition games in general. This one looks like a lot of fun. But I'm not going to take a day off. I think there's definitely an element of nostalgia to it. It's sort of like, I've enjoyed playing every Saints Row game that has come before, so it makes sense that I would be able to sort of divine some fun from this one. But that doesn't feel PTO worthy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, I'm just like, if I wanted to play something like Saints Row, why wouldn't I just play an existing Saints Row game? But that's another issue.
Because I've played all of those. I'm already done with those games.
Yeah.
I'll take a new one, please.
Sure. Even accounting for whatever amazing features or new ways the new game plans to set itself apart from the previous ones, most of the games that come out now, I'm just like, still feels very familiar.
Yeah.
Like, there's a new Monster Hunter thing coming out in a few months, and I'm sure it has all these amazing new abilities. I think they've been hyping up this week that you can do with the existing weapons, and of course they have new monsters and everything to fight. But is it going to be that different from all the other Monster Hunter games out there? Not really, and that's fine.
Yeah, they don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel every single time. I think people would probably be up in arms if they did.
Yeah. People would probably be very angry about that. So, I don't know. I think that's part of it, where I'm just like, I feel like I played this game already.
Yeah. I do get that sort of sinking feeling when I play AAA, big budget, crazy open world games lately. The last couple that I've, popped into the PS5 or Xbox have been, a couple hours, and I'm like, I get it. I know what you're doing. I understand the map full of blips, and I must run around and do all the things. And it's just, not, let's name names. The last Far Cry game, the last Horizon game that I attempted to play. Prior to that, what was that, Watch Dogs 3? Yeah, every time I put something like that in, it just feels so familiar in a way that is not comforting. It just feels exhausting. Yeah, it's just sort of diminishing returns. I feel like the formula has been overused.
And yet you're following that Saints Row excitement with that criticism.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
I get it, but there is, like I said, an element of nostalgia in that I look fondly back upon playing those games in the past. Yeah.
I think another reason behind this is that I have basically removed myself from the hype cycle, kind of intentionally. In that, 10 years ago, I would probably just be eating up all the previews for, probably Grand Theft Auto 5 coming out. They're like, oh, here's a new vehicle, or here's something new that you've never been able to do in a GTA game before, and you can do it in GTA 5.
Right.
And I would just, eat stuff like that up. Just be like, oh, new information, just show it to me, because I can't get enough information about this game. And at some point, I just got tired of all that. Whether it was because of... And GTA 5 is a weird example, because that ended up being very disappointing to me. But I just felt like I was getting bombarded by all this stuff. And it's more or less just watching commercials all the time.
Yeah.
And that's just weird to me. So, as part of that, I just feel like I have less excitement in general that's generated by sort of the hype cycle pre-release. So that's probably a large part of it. At this point, I'm just content to have games come out and, tell me a couple weeks before they do, so I can clear my schedule or whatever. But I don't need to know every single little detail about them before they come out.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like, I'm with you on that, and I feel like sort of willingly participating in the whole E3 thing and stuff like that is sort of opening yourself up to being sort of marketed to in that way, and I don't
Hmm.
know that I'm necessarily like susceptible to it anymore. Like again, I roll my eyes or I look for the fast forward button for a lot of those commercials. I remember I tweeted not too long ago that the best part of a Nintendo Direct was that there wasn't any Madden content or Call of Duty content for me to have to roll my eyes and fast forward through. No judgment on people who get excited about those games. I have a friend who likes Madden and it's the one game he buys every single year.
Hmm.
So it's very much, a thing. People enjoy that. Clearly, it's in the top 10 most played games so far this year. But yeah, just not, doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah. Once
Um,
again, I will just
yeah.
continue talking about Final Fantasy, but it's one of the few cases where I actually do get into the hype cycle because they will put out stuff like, oh, the new patch is coming up, so here's a trailer, and we're going to have a little sit down with the producer. He's going to talk about what we can expect.
You
And
soak it up.
yes, exactly. And this is even more hilarious to me because as highly as I think of Final Fantasy XIV, the overall structure in like how they release new content for that is so templated and formulaic. Like every single patch is like, oh, here's a new dungeon, here are 2 or 3 new bosses to fight, here's 50 pieces of equipment or whatever. You more or less know what you're getting every single time. And yet I'm just like, oh my god, show me pictures of it. Give it to me. Maybe some of it will like leak out early. We'll get to check it out. Who knows what's going on?
Oh, that's hysterical.
So maybe if I really wanted to just build up my excitement for new stuff, I should just get back on the news cycle. But I'm also kind of okay with it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, this is sort of the sense of discovery that, like, hopping on Twitter and seeing, like, there's this new game that people are talking about, and here's some screenshots, or here's a trailer, or, like, this came out today and it's getting really, really good reviews, or this is the little one person indie darling that everybody's talking about and millions of people are playing on Steam. Like,
Hmm.
that sense of discovery is like, oh, where the hell did that come from? What is this thing? How have I not heard of this? I like that. I like that little sense of mystery where it sort of pops up on my radar and it seems to be sort of adored by people whose opinions I trust. And yeah, it's out right now. You can go play it on the Switch right this second if you want to.
I do
Rather
really
than,
like being surprised.
maybe
when
this
a
is
new
coming
game
out
comes
in 6 years.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the games I follow, like on social media, are especially bad about that. We mentioned Monster Hunter, and like I don't know what their social media plan is. Clearly, it's working because those games are very popular.
Right.
But they will release all this information about like the next Monster Hunter game months out from release, to the point where I can't even tell. Like they've been doing kind of a media blitz this week about like the new weapons I was talking about, or the new weapon skills or whatever. And I'm just like, I don't know if that means the game is coming out like next week or 4 months from now. It could be either or, with the way that they promote games on there.
Yeah.
So it's just weird. I like don't really need that constant level of hype because like I did try to keep up with it for a while, especially in Monster Hunter's case, but it just got exhausting. I was just like, why are you telling me all this right now? I'm not even going to get to play the game for 6 months.
Right. It's a very long runway.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, this got much sadder than I thought it would, but Essian, you're not alone. You're not the only one, man. It's this is a thing that happens. It probably goes in cycles. Hang in there. You will find love again someday. Probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely miss sort of the like Christmas morning anticipation of a new game coming out. But
Sure.
do I miss it that much? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a ton of those. They used to be more like music for me. Concerts are certainly that. I get excited about seeing a band I like live.
Mhm.
I also sort of get to the night of the show and I'm like, oh God.
It's like I have
so
to leave the
far.
house. Yeah.
I have to leave the house. I have to put on clothes. Yeah. Clothes that I could be seen outside of the house in. I generally
Sure.
have clothes
Sure.
on
You're
in the
generally
house.
clothed
Yeah.
at home.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but I still like that. That's still very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking I have to go back and figure out how directly this coincided with like me aging out of the what is it, like 18 to 34 demographic. I was like, oh, maybe that's why those they pick those numbers. Maybe it just happens. Maybe you just don't get excited for anything after 34.
I've just been, yeah, I've been running on fumes for years now.
Yeah.
I go into Home Depot and I'm like, oh, those are really nice cabinets. Oh, look at this appliance. This is, wow. I've never had a kitchen where all my appliances were the same color. That's exciting.
Yeah. I do like looking at appliances.
Adult things. Yeah.
Yeah.
We paid to have the house power washed last summer, and it was like, I felt like I had a whole new house. Like, look at this house. This house has never looked this good before. I didn't even realize it was this color. I was so excited about it. I took pictures of it. I sent it to my parents. It was a thing. And I sometimes feel like I don't even know myself anymore.
Yeah. Did they let you do any of the power washing?
No, unfortunately, this was kind of fun about it, is it happened while I was at work.
Oh,
so I left in the morning, and it was a gross, dirty house. And I came back, and it was a beautiful, gleaming house that I barely recognized. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. Just like, I must be on the wrong street.
Right. I hope they let me in. I hope am I dressed fancy enough to get into this party?
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are the things that I get excited about, apparently.
Nice. Well, that's fine.
And that said, this will be our final episode.
I was going to say, do it in next week. We will do 45 minutes on power washing.
Power washing hangover, exactly.
And also just Animal Crossing, because we can't avoid it. There is a power washing simulator. That's where I was going with this. I was wondering if
cool, yeah. That's funny. That is a video game.
Piqued your interest.
I would find that probably very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
So if you, dear listeners, have thoughts on this and would like to chime in, would like to chat with Essien and the rest of our Discord crew, you should head over to VGHangover.com and look for the link to join our Discord. Hang out and chat with us about video games and other things. You can always email us. We love reading your emails on the air. You can get in touch with us at contact@VGHangover.com.
Well, this feels like the outro already. Are we wrapping up?
No, we haven't even done video games yet. Let's do some video games, DJ.
Wait, so before we move on, what is the number one thing on your list? The number one game, I guess, just to, eliminate all the power washers that you are looking forward to. Is it Saints Row?
Well, like this year, like immediate future, the next like AAA video game that I'm super excited about playing is probably Saints Row.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, or what's the other, the Gotham Knights? Those I like those games too. Those Batman Arkham games have been a ton of fun, and the Gotham Knights thing looks kind of fun. So I would play that, I think.
All right.
But big picture, I don't see myself using any PTO for a video game until Breath of the Wild 2 comes out.
Oh yeah, I don't know what the next PTO game would be for me until the next expansion, of course.
I thought they were done. Didn't you tell me they were done?
They wrapped up the storyline, but they're still going to make expansions.
They could still tell new stories.
Yeah, I feel like at least a couple more. That's the big question. Like, we're talking about Grand Theft Auto 5. Like, at what point do you just have to make a new one? So I kind of wonder about that, too. Like,
yeah,
the game is still very healthy, and a lot of people are playing it, but at what point do you just say, okay, we gotta just, like, do something else?
Right. Well, that's my point, is why would you, if millions of people are still dropping money in the 13-year-old one?
Yeah. I feel like they get a lot of, or
9-year-old one.
They buy themselves a lot of time every time they do one of these, like, updated versions for new consoles. So, like, the PS4 one, the PS5 one, just gets a little nicer. Doesn't quite look like the same version that came out on PS3 and Xbox 360 almost a decade ago.
Jeez. Crazy.
I mean, that's great that you can keep playing the same game for 10 years. That's awesome if you're really into it.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just jealous. I just, I wish they continued to service Animal Crossing that way.
Yeah.
Or what? What else? I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing really I've ever sort of clicked with that's one of those lifestyle games or, what do they call it? Games as a service. Yeah. I most recently probably did the Division and Division 2. I played a bunch of those with Paul, and we had a lot of fun with them, but, I didn't stick around for all the patches and expansions. And I was, again, recently informed via our Discord that there was a new, what do they call it? Expansion pack thing being, or a new season. A new season is the right word, being added to the Division 2. And I was like, well, I thought they were making the Division 3. Where's that? So maybe I just need to update my sort of model about how I consume video games or how video games are consumed these days.
Yeah. Maybe you will get super into the Division 3. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Those are fun. I mean, I gotta take a day off for it, but
No. Or, maybe you will.
Yeah. Or, maybe we'll have another global pandemic and I'll have all kinds of free gaming time.
Yeah.
Monkeypox,
what could be more perfect than the Division 3 in these troubling times?
It comes out on the first day the monkeypox hits the Pennsylvania shores.
Yeah. Wasn't the original Division about a global pandemic?
It was, yeah. On Black Friday. Yeah.
It's pretty uncomfortable.
Awkward.
Ugh. That's why monkeys are banned from my Animal Crossing island.
Yeah, I've never been into the monkey citizens or villagers, I guess.
Yeah. For good reason, apparently.
Right, clearly.
I don't know how that stuff works.
Harbingers of bad omens, yeah.
Don't email me.
So now we talk about video games?
Sure.
Sure.
It's that time.
Cool. So I've been playing Citizen Sleeper. This is one of those games that I was sort of like, what is this thing? Where did this come from? And it was magically sort of available and had really good reviews and seemed to be liked by a bunch of people on the internet. And I was like, oh, it looks cool. And it had a good trailer. That was a sealed the deal for me too, as I watched the trailer for it. And I was like, wow, I don't know what's happening, but I'm in. I'm suckered in. It set the stage real nicely. It had a lot of tone to it. It had a cool voiceover. This is how you market a video game to me. So yeah, I gave it a shot. I'm playing it on the Switch. It is a really unique take on a RPG. How to even sort of set this up? You are like a Blade Runner. You're an automaton, a robot, an android that has sort of a planned obsolescence lifeline or lifetime, and that you're supposed to be decommissioned after a certain period of time because you become sentient. You learn so much that you're now effectively a human being.
Oh, is that what happens?
Yeah. Isn't that how that works? Yeah. So
I only barely started playing this. I was gonna make a real effort to play this, and then after last week's show where we talked about Vampire Survivors a lot, I just played like 10 more hours of that instead of this game. And the whole time I was like, oh man, I should be checking out Citizen Sleeper.
Should be playing Citizen Sleeper.
But I got all these skeletons to kill. So I don't think I actually completed the tutorial, so I just have the slightest understanding of this game.
Gotcha. So you arrive at the beginning of Citizen Sleeper as an escapee, as a sentient android kind of on the run, and you go to this kind of lawless space station, and are taken in by a kindly person, and you hide there with limited resources, knowing that someone's going to come looking for you. That you're supposed to be decommissioned, you're supposed to be shut down, and you can't hide here forever. So you quickly kind of get to work, kind of building resources, building connections, exploring the space station, and looking for people who can help you escape, basically. Stop being tracked, because there is a tracking chip kind of thing inside of you. You need money, you need credits. Your body will also continue to sort of deteriorate because your keepers before were giving you drugs that stopped the part of your body that looks human. The drugs were stopping that from deteriorating. So you are rapidly kind of falling apart, basically, unless you can get black market drugs. So there's all these sort of resources and connections, and everything requires money, and there are a lot of people you can and cannot trust. And you basically sort of explore the space station and kind of build these connections, build these relationships. If your health is good, across the top of your screen, you'll roll a couple of die every morning, every cycle, every day you start your story anew on the spaceship. And those dice rolls you can sort of apply to different kind of, opportunities of chance throughout the course of your interactions. So some things like buying food just require credits, just require a little bit of money. And you can get money by, helping somebody in the junkyard tear down derelict spaceships. But if you're an engineer and you've selected a class at the beginning of the game, you get an extra +1 die to that roll. So you you want to do a good job at it. You want to have a likelihood of maybe finding something special in the salvage, and not hurting yourself and doing further damage to your body. You use one of your higher dice rolls. If you're at the end of your day and you've got a couple of 1s or 2s left, everything's a bit of a gamble. The odds are not necessarily in your favor when you use low number dice rolls. So there's little kind of games of chance, opportunities of chance that are encountered throughout the course of the day, and you have to dole out your your dice rolls accordingly.
That's about as far as I've gotten. Like, they just explained to me that there's going to be this dice system and all this resource management, which is a surprise because the way this started, I thought, like, oh, is this like a visual novel or something? Or it reminded me a lot of, what was that game? The Subsurface Circular, where you're on a futuristic monorail.
Right.
And it's just a lot of dialogue, which is how this starts out. Where you're just talking to this other character who's woken you up.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is interesting. But then they very quickly explain, oh, by the way, your body is disintegrating and you have to eat food. Also, you have to pay for the food. You don't have any money. And it's like, oh, wow, this got much more complicated than I was just reading a fun story up to this point.
Yeah. It is, and it is a lot of ways in a visual novel. It is, the screen is split down the left-hand side. The bulk of the screen is taken up by essentially kind of a schematic of the space station. You're not really even wandering the halls and going into buildings. There's no like visual depiction of the pub, the bar that you hang out in. A window will open up on the right-hand side of the screen, and you'll get some exposition, some kind of flowery language that explains, what the people are like and what the mood is like in the place. And the bartender asks, would you like a drink? And you get a couple of different options, and you have to sort of, weigh your choices based on how much money you have and maybe not knowing what alcohol does to your deteriorating body. But maybe you can also sort of, sacrifice one of your die rolls to make friends with the bartender, because bartenders have useful information. And let's just say, for example, that you get a lead, some resource on something else you should check out. Another icon will pop up on that schematic, essentially, of the space station, and you just sort of navigate your cursor over to it, and you don't actually walk down the hallway or open a door or, ride on elevators or anything. This is not Mass Effect by any stretch. It is very much you reading a really cool sci-fi novel that has a bit of a pen and paper dice roll kind of RPG skeleton assembled over the top of it.
Yeah. It reminds me a bit of 80 Days, which was more or less a text adventure game with light sort of like inventory management and conversation options. But it was very story-based, and sort of the conversation options you selected would direct how the story progressed.
I think I've had 80 Days on my phone for like 2 years.
Have you not played that?
And have never played it.
Oh, you have to check it out. Oh, so good.
Yeah. I own it. I will have to play it at some point. Yeah, that's true. I'll maybe get into that for a backlog attack or something this summer, because it has always seemed like something that would be right up my alley, and I don't know why I've never tried it.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can't believe you haven't played that. For some reason, I just assumed.
Structurally, it kind of reminds me a bit of, and I don't know that you played this either, but Disco Elysium, I think, is probably the most recent thing that I played that felt like it had a similar structure, where on the left-hand side of the screen, it was more of a one-to-one. You had sort of visual characters, and you were kind of wandering around exploring an environment. But on the right-hand side, it was essentially a novel that you were reading, with decision points and character building and role-playing elements and stuff like that. So, this feels very much sort of like the product of a post-Disco Elysium world. But I really like it. I'm into it. I if that was not clear, if my sort of fumbling through how to best describe this thing was not any indicator, I've had a lot of fun with this. Generally not a big reader of science fiction, but I'm into this. I'm into these characters. I'm really rooting for my android to survive and get away. And anytime you get sort of this glimmer of hope in any relationship where, hey, somebody's got a spaceship, you just need a couple of extra parts to fix it. They'll take you out of here. Like all of my resources, all of my brain power goes into, how do I get those parts? How do I get off the space station? How do I survive? there is this sort of ominous sense of dread of something's coming. There's a little countdown clock at the at the beginning of every day that says, number of days until the hunter comes for you. Yeah. So there's things like that kind of keep you productive, that keep you from just sort of wandering around and making friends with people and etc. You definitely have to, milk as much, as many objectives out of each day as humanly possible to
I don't know about that.
Stay ahead and escape. But it's really, really cool. I've had a couple of playthroughs now. One complete playthrough.
Oh, really?
It is very much a survival game. You can mismanage all these resources. You can starve to death. You can, screw up your money management in such a way that you have kind of no way forward. So it's there is definitely a very sort of serious kind of fail state issue that you run into, but a game about these things should have consequences, right? Not everything has to be, wholesome cat cafe management. Although I like those games too. But no, I'm super into Citizen Sleeper. I'm attempting now a second playthrough with a different class of character. And that class is obviously opening up a couple different kind of dialogue options and work options, ways for making money and stuff like that, because you have different perks and advantages based on, the skill set and the history of your little android. So
how long was the first playthrough?
Geez, I probably got 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, substantial. It didn't outweigh its welcome by any means. But I wish I had stayed alive longer, obviously. Wish maybe I had made some better choices.
Die or whatever?
I made some dubious choices.
Okay.
Maybe you trust the wrong people. Maybe you spend so much time, working on a solution that seems so obvious, and then maybe it goes a different way. It feels built for re-exploring, though. It feels built to, to see how much longer, can I stay alive for 2 more days? Can I actually get off the space station? Is there a way to win this thing? I'm into it. I'm intrigued. I don't feel necessarily super punished by it. I don't sort of groan at the possibility of having to do it all over again, because it's delivered so well. And there's such a sort of a, kind of efficiency to the language of it that I feel like it's, maybe not infinitely re-explorable, but definitely has enough hooks to kind of keep me trying at least a couple more times.
Do they have any features that sort of help you speed through subsequent playthroughs?
I don't know. I don't know if I've necessarily found anything. You can kind of click quickly through some of the dialogues and stuff like that, but it is like a lot of the things that sort of pop up are pretty information dense.
Yeah.
So I try not to zoom through too much of it unless I'm 100% certain I've read it before already.
Okay. I was just thinking, like, when I played other visual novels that have these multiple endings and different branches of the story, they will usually include something like, or an option to sort of fast forward through dialogue sequences that you've seen previously until you're required to make a decision.
Until or something new pops up. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I don't have my Switch handy. I would have to pop it open again, but I've not looked for that.
Okay. That's fine. I think, like, if a playthrough is just a couple hours, that's not too bad having to go through that again. I'm trying to remember how long the average 80 days playthrough was. I feel like it might have been, an hour or two, depending on, you could kind of play it at your own pace.
And was that sort of built to be, replayable to a certain degree, to make different choices, and hopefully it goes a different way?
There were so many different routes you could take, because, you're going around the world. So you have your choices of different travel options, and there are so many different ways. Like, the game could end, and I won't give any of them away here. I mean, you can probably imagine stuff that would happen to you, but I think there was no way you could get away with just doing one playthrough of that game, because it just felt like, there are so many really interesting decisions that I didn't, or like options that I didn't choose. I want to go back and first of all see if I can even find that option again, because sometimes you would you either get distracted doing something else, or I forget if it just like wouldn't present you with certain options on each playthrough. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but yeah, the whole time you were playing it, you just got inklings of like, oh man, what if I had just done this? Like, that would have been cool, but we're doing this other thing instead.
Yeah, there's definitely elements of that in Citizen Sleeper where maybe a little less binary, but I also sort of feel like, geez, if I had that choice to make over again, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I would spend more time on X instead of Y, because I sort of like a Persona game, it presents more to you than you can realistically do in a single day, a day within the game anyways. So, plus you're also trying to, feed your body and keep it alive and maybe sleep through the night. So there's, like I said, that survival element that comes creeping in sometimes too, where you'd rather just explore and check out all the stuff and talk to all the people, but, you're dying.
Is that pretty easy to just keep a handle on? Do you spend a lot of the time just trying to like stay conscious and make sure you have enough money and all that?
The engineer playthrough, it felt like money was fairly abundant, because it's a space station again. So there's always, something you can help fix, or something like the job about tearing down derelict spaceships and stuff like that, was super useful. But you get distracted, so you can spend, a couple of your resource die, doing this spaceship teardown exercise, or you could investigate a lead on a possible vessel that could get you off the space station to freedom, or a guy who can disable the tracker so that they can't find you anymore. So I would really like to sort of sniff around and start answering all of those questions that I have in my head. But, I'm a little cash poor right now. And I know that tomorrow I have to eat, because you have a little hunger meter that ticks down 2 lines every time you sleep. So you're trying to plan sort of like, I need money, I need food. Eventually you need those drugs that stop your body from deteriorating. So that becomes a factor you have to manage later. And they all happen on very sort of clear visual cycles. So if you're thoughtful and a little methodical, you can kind of plan through how to best spend your money, how to allocate your resources a little bit, until stuff starts popping up where you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming, or, oh, I made a bad choice and I hurt myself and now I need medical care quicker and that's expensive, and et cetera, et cetera. So, like a good RPG, it throws things your way that, you can't necessarily plan for, and kind of keeps you on your toes and keeps you guessing. So yeah, I don't find it unmanageable. And I have in the past found some survival games to be just really cumbersome and really like punishing.
Yeah,
and
that
just
was my
so
main
stress
concern.
inducing. And I don't feel that way with Citizen Sleeper at all.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's what I worry about, is like, it seems like there's a cool game in here besides all the survival stuff. I just don't want to get bogged down trying to keep myself alive every turn.
Yeah. It did early in the game, and I'm not sure if you got this far. It does this sort of freeze frame where like an overlay pops up over your screen, and little arrows start to point at all the things that like, here's what this means, and here's how this goes, and this is what the. And I stopped at that point. I was like, I don't know if this is for me. This this feels like a lot of input this early in the game. It feels like a very sort of cumbersome tutorial, but I'm glad I hung with it. I'm into the story. I'm into the characters. I really like kind of the feedback loop and kind of how to allocate my dice rolls throughout the course of the day as my resources. And so I'm having a really good time with exploring it and kind of checking it out. I just had to sort of get over that initial like shutdown hump when it started to convey tons of information to me in a very short period of time. But no, I find the survival element of it fairly manageable.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So again, this is called Citizen Sleeper. I'm playing it on the Switch. I know it's also out on PC. I'm not sure if it's made its way to other consoles just yet, but I've been having a really, really good time with it. It is utterly unique. I cannot think of too many other video games, other than the little points of references I've kind of pointed out to things like Disco Elysium and whatnot that feel like this. So if any of this appeals to you, or if in general, I think if you're kind of a cool sci-fi fan and you get easily wrapped up in novels like Snow Crash or movies like Blade Runner, I would definitely, encourage you to check out Citizen Sleeper.
Yeah. At the very least, it seems like a cool kind of cyberpunk game.
Yeah. Cyberpunk without all the, the weight and the baggage that name sort of implies at this point, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear, like, whenever I mention cyberpunk, I am not trying to refer to the CD Projekt game. I'm just talking about cyberpunk as a general sort of.
It was a genre before it was a mediocre video game. Yeah.
Right.
So what are you playing, DJ?
I played a game which is not quite a survival game, but as you've been describing this, I realize it has a surprising amount in common with Citizen Sleeper. I've been playing this game called Little Witch in the Woods, which I just did it to myself again. I played an early access game
Wow.
I didn't realize this was in early access. I've been like looking forward to this coming out for a long time, but that's just how games come out these days. For the most part, it's fine. There is some question about. Well, I mean, I'll come back to this. The idea in Little Witch in the Woods is you are an apprentice witch, or rather, you're like, yeah, you're kind of a student witch named Ellie who's on her way to start her apprenticeship under some master witch in the big city. And, you know, you've got this big talking hat, you've got this sort of witch spell book or notebook, and you're traveling to the big city. And at some point, you kind of get lost in a forest and stranded. But lo and behold, you find an abandoned witch house, which has a big witch workshop in the basement. And you just kind of capriciously decide to just stay there and give up that apprenticeship, apparently, and, solve local problems for people in the village next to the woods. So, kind of an odd character.
Yeah.
So from there, it kind of turns into like a daily life sim kind of game where you go out and you collect resources to make potions and other sort of witchy concoctions, and then you go and talk to the villagers and fulfill their quests. And there's like this whole sort of mystery around stuff going on in the village. Like it's very recently abandoned, and part of your mission is to sort of restore the village in the process as you solve all these other problems going on.
Seems like a lot of heavy lifting for a Little Witch in the Woods.
Yeah, well, it starts off with like, there are all these kind of thorny vines that have taken over. And you're like, oh, I think I have a potion, or I think I have ways to deal with these vines. So you just start gathering materials for potions. And that just sort of leads to the next thing in the quest line. It just kind of builds from there.
Okay.
Plus, you start developing all these relationships with the villagers. Like, there's the village mayor or chief or something, and then there are a bunch of shopkeepers. There's the representative from the Witches Guild or whatever who stops by to sell you sort of more witching supplies. But it feels like just a very laid back and casual sort of life sim, which I found pretty enjoyable.
Cool. Yeah, as you were describing it, it sounded like sort of like, hefty objectives, but they sound like particularly sort of witchy objectives when you sort of phrase it that way.
Yeah.
I have just the potion for this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Conveniently, it turns out that the representative from the Witch Guild has a whole like stock of potion recipes that she is willing to sell you that turn out to be just what you need to solve the new problem that has popped up
perfect.
that day. So that's very convenient. It took me a little while to sort of get down the routine that the game expects you to have, or at least the routine that I've ended up with, because I wasn't sure. It starts out so weird because you're on the way to this big city, you're on a train, and I'm just like, oh, so the game's called like Little Witch in the Woods. I was imagining there would be like woods at some point. Is it is there a big forest next to the city, or what's going on? And you start out by walking around these train cars, and there's like a weird keyword system where somebody will mention something, and then it gets added to this keyword bank, and you can bring that up in conversation with other people. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, man, I thought this game was about making potions or something. And instead I'm playing Phoenix Wright almost, where I'm just asking people, like, do you know about this thing? And meanwhile, like, the localization isn't terrific. It doesn't sound like it was written by someone where English is their first language. I mean, it's from a Korean development studio, I believe. And it's not like the localization is terrible, but it's just off enough where like every other line of dialogue, I'm just like, it sounds a little weird. So I'm just really not sure what to make of this game starting off. But as soon as you end up in the abandoned witch house and you sort of get an understanding of, oh, I'm going to go out and need to go out and forage ingredients for potions. And once I have the potions, I can like use them to get rid of these vines, or I can take them to the merchant who will give me money for them. And then I can use the money to make upgrades to my witch house. You sort of get an idea of like the rhythm of it.
Right.
It's sort of like, the very first time you played Animal Crossing and you're just like, I have no idea what to do in this game. Like, how does anything work? It took a little while for me to just wrap my head around like the systems that are involved.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been super fun after I sort of got a handle on it. There's like a day and night cycle, so you get up at 8 in the morning, like most witches, I assume. And typically what I'll do is I'll go and stop by all the shops because they'll tell you what sort of items are in demand that day. And I'll just make a note of it. And then go and forage for sort of like all the items that are available in the morning or during the daytime, which you kind of like you record in your notebook by doing a little sketch of whether it's like a plant or some kind of animal. You just like pull out your quill and you jot down some notes, and then it just tells you, oh, this witchweed or whatever you can harvest at any time, and you can use it to make this potion. Or in some cases, there are animals which are only available in the morning or in the evening, so you have to be mindful about when you're out foraging. So I'll do my sort of morning rounds. I'll go make some potions and take them to the shop before the shop closes up for the day, and then in the evening I'll do like my evening rounds and, catch all the sparkly butterflies that only come out at night and that sort of thing.
Now you're talking my language, DJ.
Yeah. So it's kind of like there's not really a survival aspect of it. You're never starving to death. Like the worst thing that can happen is I think if you stay up until 11 o'clock, you just pass out and wake up at the witch house again. So totally harmless. But there is this, it does feel a little bit like you're on a treadmill starting out because you have to, gather materials to I keep wanting to say build these potions. You don't really build a potion, but you have to like cook these potions essentially and then take them to the shop so you can earn a little money, which lets you, upgrade your stuff or buy rarer materials or key items that you need to progress the main storyline. So once you get kind of a handle on that, it feels a lot more natural, just kind of going through the motions.
Cool. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's very low pressure, it feels like. I was worried starting out, especially when she was talking about like, oh, I'm going to have this apprenticeship in the big city and it's going to last for a few years, I think. And up in the corner of the screen, there's a little thing that tells you what day of the week it is. And like, I think what day of the month like has a number next to it. I'm just like, oh my God. This better not be, you have a certain amount of time to complete all these objectives before your apprenticeship ends. And, hopefully you get to that point. Otherwise, you have failed as a little witch in the woods. I was like, oh, I don't need that. That sounds stressful. But I think it
doesn't sound like fun.
It's merely there to just tell you what time of day it is. I don't, like, so far the day of the week hasn't really had any impact on anything. So it's all very, like, low stress. And in fact, it makes me think, I've always talked about, I wish Animal Crossing and sort of all the gathering tasks in that were, I don't know, like a little larger scale. Because it feels like after a certain point in Animal Crossing, you have a pretty good understanding of your island or your town or whatever. And you can just like do your daily rounds and collect all the resources and whatever else you need in just a few minutes. And then you're just good for the day. But in this, it really feels like, oh, I have to be very deliberate about what resources I need to gather each given morning and evening. And even though, like, at the end of the day, it just, you go to bed and a new day dawns, you can just do all the other stuff again. There's no time limit on anything. I kind of like the feeling that you have to be very conscious about sort of what potions you want to be able to mix that day. And, like, how often you can take your little flying broom over to the village and talk to the people there, because that takes time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very cool. It does feel like, you have to be a little more mindful about what you're doing. Right.
So what makes this early access? Did you find anything that felt particularly sort of rough or unfinished? Or do I have sort of a mistaken impression of what early access means?
I'm not totally clear, and I haven't just gone into, like, I guess the Steam forums to figure out what makes this early access, other than the fact that it sounds like they're cleaning up a bunch of bugs or something. I've read that it's not especially long. I don't know if that is like due to it being an early access, if they plan to add on to the campaign at certain points, or when it's all completed, it will still be roughly the same length. Because it's not like, this isn't from a massive studio or anything. I think so far I've been playing it for quite a while. And if it wraps up in a few more hours, I think that's still a pretty decent for the size game.
Right.
So not totally clear on that, and I've just been trying to avoid seeing too many spoilers for what's going on.
Cool. But it's not broken or anything.
It's not. No, it's not. It's definitely not broken. There are a few weird issues with I don't know. I feel like the controls could be more responsive in certain cases, but there's nothing that feels especially like that it detracts from the game experience or anything.
Cool.
It would be nice if they sort of polished up the localization to be a little more natural in English, but again, I've been trying to tell myself, this is probably like playing a game back on the Super Nintendo or something, or even like the PS1 era where, the quality of localizations weren't at the point where they are today, or sort of like what we're used to getting today. And back then I would have been totally fine with it. So trying not to let it bother me too much. It's just a little weird sometimes because, I don't know, some of the text just doesn't seem thematically appropriate. Not thematically, but it reminds me a lot of, like, you played Genshin Impact.
Yeah.
Like, all of the dialogue, sort of the dialogue options that it would give you, especially in the opening couple hours, because that's about the extent that I played, around, like, Paimon, that weird fairy thing that would follow you around.
Yes.
Just felt like, I don't know what type of game this is supposed to be. Is it like a comedy? Is it just like a very like straight up fantasy game? Everybody's very serious, but then meanwhile, they're just making all these weird jokes about how Paimon is your emergency food or whatever. It's like, oh, so is my character just a wise ass in this game? I don't know. Like, I don't really know what to make of the jokes that they try and put in. So it's just
or with something
strange.
sort of lost in translation. Yeah.
Yeah, like some of the lines just don't land correctly.
Gotcha.
Where you're just like, huh, that doesn't sound like something somebody would say in English. It sounds like maybe, it came from another language, which is probably the case. So
right.
it's fine though. I've gotten used to it at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've played enough sort of shabbily translated RPGs in your life to have a utility for dealing with those things.
Yeah, I've played games with far worse localizations than this, so like this is actually fine. There's a whole, this is probably the last thing I'll talk about, but there's like a whole potion mixing system, which is very similar to, like, if you played another game with like a crafting system, I suppose, because you go out and gather all these ingredients, and you have a couple of different means of processing them into stuff that you eventually throw into this huge cauldron in the basement of your witch house. But once you've got all these ingredients processed and everything, you look up the recipe for these potions in your spell book or whatever, and it tells you the ingredients, and then in addition, it tells you sort of the heat level you need to apply to the cauldron and what direction you need to stir the cauldron in.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I, never thought about what is involved in actually brewing a witch's potion. Although what it boils down to eventually is you just pick all these options from a menu. So you like add the ingredients and you just click the shoulder buttons a couple times until the heat level is like, this one needs to be at level 4. And much to my surprise, you don't even, I thought maybe it would be cool if you like had to turn the analog stick or something to stir the thing. But no, you just also pick that from a menu. And then you hit confirm and it mixes the potion. And if you have all the settings correct, you get a potion out of it. Otherwise, it just asks you to like try again. Which I was like, okay, this maybe could have been more involved. I thought about the discussion we had a couple weeks ago about, actually having to hotwire your car in Grand Theft Auto versus push A to hotwire the car. And which of those interactions is more interesting?
Sure.
So I felt like, oh, this seems like a missed opportunity. They could have had a really cool sort of potion mixing system. But also, you just end up making so many potions in this, whether it's something you need for a quest or whether it's just you need to like mass produce a bunch of these to sell so you can have money, that I wonder if it would have just gotten obnoxious at a certain point. Although I still kind of feel like, oh man, I wish there was just this like advanced potion mixing option that you could play around with, because that would be interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like Fantasy Life. Did you play enough of Fantasy Life to get to the point where you had to do you had different jobs in that and all the jobs? Because this was obviously the heyday of the 3DS. They were looking for things for you to do with the stylus. So they were all little kind of like on-screen manipulations you had to do to sort of execute tasks for your job.
Wasn't it just like more or less pushing a button, though? It was like a rhythm game almost.
Oh, maybe I'm misremembering, but it was the first thing that popped into my brain when you were sort of describing stirring the pot. I was like, oh, it's like Fantasy Life. Yeah.
No, it does also remind me of Fantasy Life. But what I remember of that game, it was like almost like a carnival game. Like a marker would go up and down a meter or something. You just have to press it at the right spot.
Yes, I do remember some of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise, this sounds kind of like it'd be right up my alley. That sounds kind of neat.
Yeah, I think you'd be into it.
Yeah,
it's very
much. I played.
I
started to cut you off, but Witchwood I played earlier this year. I think that it was a surprisingly similar concept where you are a witch who is foraging and collecting items you need to craft potions and spells to be able to, right some wrong and solve a mystery.
Yeah. I remember when you talked about that game, I was like, oh, is that witch game? Oh, no, it's a different witch game. Because I thought it was this game. Yeah. Yep. So at some point, I'll have to go back and play that. We can compare notes. But I think you'd be into this. It does have a very, like, I don't want to say it has an Animal Crossing vibe, but it's just that same sort of low pressure atmosphere where, like, I've been keeping myself very busy gathering these ingredients and everything, but you could just kind of, like, hang out a little bit and, gather less every day and have a little less time pressure, I suppose.
Cool. Less pressure works for me.
Yeah. Anyway, that is Little Witch in the Woods. It's on Steam Early Access currently. And I feel like, I don't think it's going to be super long or anything. I'm probably close to wrapping it up. Actually, I have no idea. I take that back. So who knows? It could just go on for like another 10 hours or so.
I've also found, as we were talking here, that Citizen Sleeper is on Xbox Game Pass. So if you have access to that, check it out there, maybe. Little Witch in the Woods also on Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, I was going to say I vaguely recall seeing this on there, which is interesting because it's, I don't know, do they put a lot of sort of early access games on there? I don't know if Xbox has the same sort of categorizations as Steam.
I don't know. I think that's a thing, definitely, I've heard of in the past, but I generally have not played games that are not in a finished, deliberately played games that are not in a finished state. So it's not something that I've really ever paid attention to before, but it's just interesting that this is kind of a simultaneous console and PC early access game.
Yeah, it's interesting how many games come out now for like PC and Xbox. I mean, I guess that's not that surprising, but it seems like last generation Xbox wasn't doing that great, so like less stuff came out for it. But now with Game Pass, it seems like all sorts of stuff is popping up.
Sure. Yeah. And it seems like the Xbox is really just a PC in there anyway. So you're just making it as easy as humanly possible to port games over to your console.
Yeah, I think that was probably the intent.
Cool. All right. Well, 2 good games this week, it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go play those some more. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would still love for you to hang out with us on Discord. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com as well. And geez, it would help us out immensely if you could subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. And maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah. Really helps us get the word out, grow the listener base. That'd be terrific. We want to give thanks again to Protodome this week for our intro and outro music. It would be also great if you would head over to protodome.bandcamp.com if you buy an album or two.
Cool. We will be back next week, right? Right.
I think so. Yeah, we're going to talk about power washing.
That's right. We promised. Absolutely. So we'll be back then. I better, I better download some new power washers.
Yeah, download power washers. Oh, do I have to play Power Washing Simulator now? Maybe. Is that on Game Pass?
Is it on Game Pass? That would make it so much easier. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tune in next week and find out. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Have a good one.
Good night.
See ya.
Feel my heat. Feel my heat.